Step 2 is the exploratory due diligence process. Next, you need to conduct a thorough due diligence, which is a bit like looking under the hood, so you can make an informed decision about whether you should make an offer on the practice. Some of the questions you want to ask the seller include practice details, some information about the practice operations, information about the insurances accepted in the practice, information on the employees that work there. We also want to know a little bit about the equipment and practice debt, and some information about the facility itself. And of course, you'll want to know about the retail information, what products they sell. And finally, you'll want to understand some financial information about the practice. You might feel a bit awkward about asking a seller for financial documents, but don't. If you plan to borrow money for the purchase of this practice, a lender is going to ask you for all this information anyway. And it's an important part of your financial due diligence in order to create your practice pro forma. This is simply an analysis of the projected income and expenses of the practice for the next 3 years. This, along with a careful cash flow analysis of the historical performance of the practice, will help you decide what a practice is worth and if you can afford it. In addition to your questions, make sure you take a good look at the external and internal appearance of the practice, including the visibility of the office, the cleanliness both inside and out. How easy is it to find parking? Is it located next to a busy intersection? And what are the surrounding businesses next to the practice? How does the office signage look? When you enter the practice, what's the entryway look? Where's the location of the reception desk? And how are the exam rooms laid out? Take a good look at the type and functionality of the equipment, and make sure you take a look at the practice management and electronic health records that are used in the practice. And finally, take a look around and make sure there's room for potential of expansion as you grow the practice. What you're really doing with these analyses are looking at the value of the practice, which is made of 2 kinds of assets, tangible and intangible assets. Intangible assets include things like the reputation of the seller, which is sometimes called goodwill, patient records, and a covenant not to compete. The majority of the value of a company comes from the goodwill as well as the anticipated future cash flow, which makes it intangible. The smaller portion of a practice's value comes from the tangible assets like equipment you need to see patients. You'll also want to pay attention to the frame inventory and how it's displayed. Is it appealing to you? Because if this is going to be your practice, you want it to reflect your personal aesthetic. And at $50 to $100 per frame, this inventory is part of the practice valuation, as are the practice financials, including things like the profit and loss statement, the current balance sheet. You'll also want to take a look at the tax returns of the practice, both personal and business. You'll also want to look at the aging report or the accounts receivable report. And it's always a good idea to take a look at the bank statements for the last 3 to 6 months. These documents play an important part of your financial due diligence in creating your practice pro forma. This will help you decide what a practice is worth and if you can afford it. It's also used by lenders to determine how much money they will lend you. I can't emphasize enough how important this process is. You'll also want to know key performance metrics such as revenue per exam, exam capture rate, frame capture rate, lens pairs capture rate, average eyewear sale, contact lens sales, exams per doctor hour, and revenue per doctor hour. While you're in the practice, this is a great opportunity to check the patient exam schedule to see if there are available appointments or a waiting list of patients. Revenue per comprehensive eye exam is another simple calculation you can perform by dividing total revenue from the past year by the number of routine comprehensive eye exams. This is an important measure that can give you insight into how well the practice is selling eyewear products, including contact lenses, and charging and collecting fees. A good ballpark number is around $400 per exam. Practice culture is another hugely underrated goodwill asset you absolutely must assess. If you're looking at a practice worth about $1 million, it probably has fewer than 10 employees, so you want them to be the kind of people your patients and you want to be around. Another element to consider in your due diligence is whether the seller will continue to have a role in the practice after closing. Will they stay on to see patients, consult, charge fees, or be involved in any way? Finally, it's important to communicate with the seller's landlord your intention of buying the practice. In most cases, the landlord will assign the existing lease and lease terms to you once you take ownership. This is extremely important since you don't want to find yourself legally committed to a purchase of a practice without first finalizing the details of the office lease. For more information, reach out to the team at VisionSource. Practice management transitions can feel daunting, but we have a team of experts who can walk you through each step that leads to your goal. For more information about how you can achieve your goal with less stress and expert guidance, fill out the form below and we'll be in touch.